beginning, they were quite simple cars with, and I think the magic was in many ways in the straight line performance. There was nothing to really rival it in the 50s. The Corvette was the fastest thing on the American road, and when you put the pedal to the floor, it made all these wonderful noises and kind of wiggled around, and it was just a tremendously exciting car.
Take it easy driving. Life, you might say, might be mine.
With its jet fighter dash, glam white-wall tyres, wrapped-round windshield, self-seeking push-button radio and bucket seats, the Vette was a vision from the future.
For all their dash and flash, those early Corvettes proved to be as easy to sell as encyclopedias.
In 1953, only 300 found buyers, and most of those were sold to carefully selected VIPs, movie stars and sports personalities. The problem was the Vette was difficult to build, creaky, and had a distinctly unsporting two-speed automatic gearbox and six-cylinder engine. Things improved when Chevy dropped in a V8 in '55, but at one stage GM actually considered dropping the Corvette completely.
And it survived really because of one thing, and that was Ford. Deadly arch-rival Uncle Henry came up with a little something of his own.
What's everybody looking at? You, because you're behind the wheel of the beautiful 1955 Ford Thunderbird.
The slick T-Bird had none of the Vette's fiberglass frivolity. It had a steel body, grunty V8, wind-up windows, and a list of options longer than a Chicago phone directory.
Wop bam balloon bam 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 to the boot, oh root, 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 oh wop bam balloon bam.
In 1956, the Corvette got serious, and there were two things that gave it some teeth. One was an agonizingly beautiful new Cove body, and the other was fuel injection. It now developed 1 horsepower per cubic inch, 283 brake out of 283 cubic inches. Still wouldn't go around corners and still had lousy brakes. But nobody cared because it looked and sounded absolutely wonderful.
Not only did the second-generation Vette have the luxury of wind-up windows, it was also a genuine screamer that could run to 60 in 7 seconds and hit 120 miles an hour straight off the showroom carpet.
Keep on dreaming, keep right on dreaming, dreaming till my dreaming comes true.
After a shaky start, the Corvette had matured into the perfect personification of the American dream.
Well, this one is a 58, and it was one that I saw a doctor's wife driving when I was in high school and didn't have my driver's license yet. Was in love with her and the car and remembered it and always enjoyed them and eventually came back to them.
The Corvette of 1959 shows us an America so gorged on pleasure, it had forgotten the itch of desire. It had faddish double headlights, a 9-tooth chromium grin, and far too many fake bumps, louvres, and vents. It was essentially more show than go, and in 2 short years the Jaguar E-Type would arrive and render the Vette antiquated at a stroke. Chevrolet would have to come up with something very, very special indeed. And they did.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And taking JFK at his word, Chief Corvette engineer Zora Arcus Duntov created the now legendary Stingray. It was still fiberglass and still hand-built, but you could now choose between a roadster and a fastback. What's more, it actually went and handled as well as it looked, thanks to newfangled independent rear suspension and a choice of engines the size of rhinos. For the first time, Americans had a homegrown sports car they could be proud to drive in Europe. And with the bad boy, fuel-injected 365 brake V8, the speedo needle could rise to a thundering max of 146 miles an hour. And Corvettes were being beamed into every American home with the hit TV series Route 66. Demand instantly doubled and the St. Louis factory had to work night and day to cope. It was the best Vette yet. With a base price of $4,257, buyers could add options like leather seats, knockoff alloy wheels, air conditioning, power brakes, and 4 on the floor. It was a monster hit.
The 63 Stingray hit the market like a thunderbolt. And for the first time in the Corvette's history, it was a sellout success. And the reason why the dealer's waiting list stretched 6 months into the horizon was simple. These were the Cold War years, remember. This car was perfect for a belligerent American psyche. Something that looked like it could be put into a rocket launcher and aimed at Moscow. And 4 on the floor. It was a monster hit. The 63 Stingray hit the market like a thunderbolt. And for the first time in the Corvette's history, it was a sellout success. And the reason why the dealer's waiting list stretched 6 months into the horizon was simple. These were the Cold War years, remember. This car was perfect for a belligerent American psyche. Something that looked like it could be put into a rocket launcher and aimed at Moscow.
They made a lot of improvements in them on the Stingray. Like this particular year came out with the disc brakes where the ones prior to that didn't have it. I like this because the body style is all flows even and it handles a lot better than the previous models. I guess maybe I'm reliving my second childhood or whatever you might want to say, but it just makes me feel younger when I drive it.
This is the 65 Corvette Stingray. Looks like it means business, and it does. These new functional side vents help cool the engine. Put yourself in the cockpit and find out why they call it Stingray. You'll see what driving a real sports car is all about.
But by the end of the 60s, the American dream was about to go dreadfully wrong.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem. Had a main B bus undervolt.
By 1968, a localized conflict in Asia had escalated into a war America would never win, which meant that most of the Corvette's customers were busy doing tours of duty in Vietnam. Back in the US, civil unrest exploded on a massive scale as 200,000 people marched on Washington against atrocities like the My Lai massacre. While Nixon ordered B-52s to carpet bomb the Ho Chi Minh Trail, at home crazed assassins took out Martin Luther King and presidential hopeful Bobby Kennedy. The shocks never seemed to end.
The 70s were the Corvette's lowest point. The hard-charging hot rod had turned into a curvy but tame boulevard cruiser. Sure, it had lots of gimmicks and gadgets, but it looked wretchedly excessive. And when the government got involved with their emission and safety legislation, things just got worse and worse. But ironically, these were the Corvette's best-selling years, and the public adored it. It was as though General Motors knew that nobody ever lost any money underestimating American bad taste.
And it was very sad. While emission pipery strangled the Vette's power output, federal laws meant they had to wear ungainly plastic bumpers that could withstand 5-mile-an-hour impacts. American car design had come to a crashing halt.
They began to have to deal with the smog issues, especially here in Southern California. And along with that came the oil crunch in '73, which definitely put a damper on the market for big, huge, powerful 8-mile-to-the-gallon cars.
For 1980, more sporty and aerodynamic than ever.
In a bid for social acceptability, fuel consumption was hiked from 8 to 21 miles to the gallon, but the Speedo was only calibrated to a miserable 85 miles an hour. The American automobile had hit rock bottom. But by 1984, things were looking up for America and her only sports car. The economy was thumping and Uncle Sam was back on a roll. Ronald Reagan dished out tax cuts like cookies. Los Angeles was host to a string of US Olympic victories, and the sixth-generation vet found America in a mood for some serious partying. The fiberglass fossil had evolved into the fastest and most refined automobile on American roads. It was the first Vet to have a unitary galvanized chassis, LED instruments, and a top whack of 150 miles an hour. As the adverts boasted, there's no better way to see the USA.
General Motors kept bringing out something different, and I'd look at it, and then it got to '84. They brought out that new body style, and that's when I became obsessed and started having multiples, you know, 1 or 2 or 3, and then, you know, buying and selling and trading them like baseball cards.
America's love affair with the Chevrolet Corvette takes many forms, but perhaps none madder than model Corvettes. Now, if you think they're cheap, think again. This is a 1983 Corvette. Now, they didn't make a Corvette in '83, they held it over till '84, so this little tin car is worth, are you sitting down, $5,500 American dollars.
Not only are there half a dozen Corvette owners clubs in every one of the 52 American states, it's a mania that's even crossed the Atlantic.
Corvette generally is a longer lasting vehicle, and I think the engine especially can be tuned to outperform an E-Type or any other sort of European sports car.
To keep it on the road is very easy in this country. I think it has a different sort of look, a different sort of feeling than the Austin Healey, the MG, of course the E-Type, which was its main competitor.
The fun of starting the car and just driving down the road, it's for any driver that loves loud sports cars, and the sound of a V8 is unbeatable.
You've got to have the grunt. You can't get that with any European sports car. The V8 grunt.
I think I was about 17 the first time I saw a Corvette, and it was wonderful. Probably like Toad out of Wind in the Willows, you know, that sort of feeling.
If you look at the car, it's a very stunning looking car. It even looks as though it's going quickly without even moving. And obviously the performance is quite awesome.
And the current 170-mile-an-hour incarnation isn't just a technical tour de force, it is the loudest and proudest Vet of all.
So if you want to understand about America and Americans, then here you go. 6 generations of her favourite icon, and it's all here. America's power, her paranoia, her confidence, optimism, wealth, and isolationism. The Chevrolet Corvette tells us more about the American way than a whole freight train of history professors.